Hello everybody, Oliver G here from the Earful Tower podcast, talking to you on the last day of 2025 with a bit of a recap episode. So let's not beat around the bush. The idea is I'm going to tell you the top 5 episodes from the year, the top 5 guests, and the top 5 moments in general. So I want to get through 15 things. We won't muck around. And the idea is, I think if you're a fan of this show, these will give you a little bit of nostalgia and a few sort of flashbacks to some cool things that happened. And if you're a brand new listener, this will give you a good idea of what to go back and seek out from the past 12 months. But let's get into some music before we start. And here it comes. So as I said, this is a kind of listy episode. I usually do them at the end of the year, take the chance to sort of recap and think about how everything went. And speaking of recap, a few things to recap. Christmas in Provence was absolutely superb. I mean, 10 out of 10. We after the interview that you maybe heard last week, the interviews, I bought all the stuff. I bought a huge platter of cheese that I went to pick up a few days later, and that really lasted, and that was a hit for everybody. And I bought the 13 desserts as well. I got a really great magnum bottle of red wine from Natalie there. And it was just one of the coziest Christmases I could have imagined. Île-sur-le-Sorgue, or l'Île-sur-le-Sorgue, just totally lovely. The French do Christmas well, especially the small villages. Also, I mentioned 2 episodes ago, I was talking about Brigitte Bardot ever so quickly, and I saw that she died just a couple days ago. I think she was 91 years old. Complicated story there. Beloved actress and sort of sex symbol around the world, but also quite loathed in her later years for, wow. I read somewhere, I mean, if you don't know about it, for sort of inciting hate speech, and she was really anti-immigrants and all this kind of stuff. And yet, at the same time, she was really pro-animal welfare. And I saw one interesting take on it, was that it must have been so unusual, or such an unusual sort of trajectory to be so loved, like people in love with you when you're young, and then when you're older, to essentially go to not liking people in general at all, and preferring animals. I mean, like I said, weird trajectory. Anyway, something to think about. As for the moments of the year, let's get straight into it, okay? So what I've done is I've listed the 5 top episodes. And this is just based on hits, what you guys downloaded the most. So from 5 through to 1, the number 5 was How to Plan a Trip to Paris, Tips for Seeing the Big 5. And I know these ones work. Whenever you explain how to see Paris, people who are coming to see Paris want to click on it much more than when I'm going to interview someone who maybe, let's say, has a, restaurant or something that you've maybe never heard about before. It just makes sense. But at the same time, I'm not going to just always do those, but I knew that would work, and I wanted to do that on an episode with my Private Paris, who were the sponsors of the show for a large chunk of the year. And we recorded on a private boat on the Seine River, a really fun episode, and they talked about how best to plan to visit the Big 5, which was the Louvre, Notre Dame, Musée d'Orsay, Eiffel Tower, and of course the Seine River. So that was earlier in the year. I'll link everything, I think, in a Substack post, so you can find it nice and easily, and maybe even on the earfultower.com. Number 4 was a fun story for you guys, less so for us. It was after 10 years in Paris, we finally got scammed by a charming plumber. And it was Lena and I trying to make light of a rough situation where our kitchen sink was clogged. Basically, the kitchen sink was clogged. And then a guy came out who was so charming. He even told me, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's in the episode. He told me something about how nice my blue eyes were. And then sort of followed up by saying, but it'll be another 200 euros for this. And we just paid it, basically. Oh, it was horrible. But got a lot of feedback from that one that you guys enjoyed it. So I'm glad to hear that. Number 3 was the 10 things I've learned from my 10 years in Paris. So that means in 2025, I hit the 10-year in Paris milestone, and of course building this podcast and everything that comes with the Earful Tower was a big part of that. And I sort of reflected on the things that I've learned, 10 things that I've learned. So another list, but it's easy. Let's go behind the scenes on this episode, I think. Whenever I do a sort of 10 things, or even this episode, it makes it easier for me to talk for 20 or 30 minutes just by myself if I've got a list to go through. You know, it's like a structure to a conversation. I'll tell you, if you sit there with a microphone with nothing but a headline trying to talk for half an hour, it's pretty hard. And this just makes it much easier. So that was fun. 10-year anniversary, that went quickly as well. Number 2, a very deep dive into Notre Dame, which of course reopened in 2025. And I met with Boris Petrovich, friend of the show Boris, and he just published a series of historical essays, books, and one big book. I think it's one big book or maybe 10 small books. He published them all at once, and he really took us deeply into the Notre Dame Cathedral. That was a fun episode too. And then number 1, no surprises here, the Paris bucket list, things to do in 2025. Probably the next episode you'll hear on this show will be the bucket list for 2026. And if you're new to that, I do it a little differently every year, but this year it was Lena and I listing out 5 things we wanted to do. And incidentally, that bucket list came about because Notre Dame, I'd always wanted to go to the top of it to see the view, and then it burned down and I realized I'd missed my chance. Even though it was there every day, I just figured I could always do it tomorrow. So then we started keeping a bucket list of things that we didn't want to wait to see. We didn't want a reason to go and see. And we've been doing it for years, and it's always popular because I guess listeners and readers get to see what some locals want to do in this city. It's beyond a list of gotta see the Eiffel Tower and so on. And yeah, we'll tell you how we went with our bucket list for 2025 next week. So that was the top episode in terms of downloads. The one thing I don't really like when you're talking about stats like this is the first episode of the year always has a very good chance of being the most downloaded because it's had 52 weeks out there in the world to be listened to. Whatever I put out last week, the one about what the French eat for Christmas, that has had 7 days to be downloaded. So how could it ever compete? You know? So, I don't know, take it with a pinch of salt if you want. More behind the scenes here. It's exceptionally rare for a podcast episode download to be viral. You know, on YouTube you can have really viral videos, or an Instagram post can be viral. It just gets caught up with the flow. That's because it's very easy to watch a YouTube video or very easy to see an Instagram reel. It just pops in front of you. You don't even choose it. Whereas a podcast, you have to sort of, well, you know, you're listening to this right now. You have to be in the right mindset, maybe the right place in a car or mowing the lawn or going for a walk. You have to choose to put it on. Even if someone sends it to you, it doesn't mean it's a quick click and a watch. So, yeah, nothing really goes viral. So often it's the ones earlier in the year that seem to do well. So there you go. Behind the curtains there. Now, this next thing is the top Earful episodes with a guest, or the top guests. And what I've done is a mix of sort of the impact that guest had on coming on the show, as well as the download figures. So there's a sort of a science behind it. But if you prefer the episodes with one special guest, these next 5 are really good ones for you. And it starts with behind the scenes of Paris with the Queen of Tourism, who is Corinne Menagou, who's the managing director of the Paris Tourism Board. It was cool to sit down and talk with her. We talked about the legacy of the Olympics, what's coming next, talked about her job. Of course, we talked about the city, what she'd do on her last day in the city. And she was, that's a cool person. That woman has the keys to this city, and it was fun to hear her take on it. And at the end of the interview, we chatted, and she said, if there's anything else you'd like to see in the city, ask, we can make it happen. So let's see, maybe in 2026 I'll call on her again. Number 4 was one of my favorites, was Gregory Philippe, the episode Carving Paris, How Limestone Built This City. And it's where I visited the stonemason Greg in his atelier, his studio in the Marais, and we just kind of got nerdy on how the city was built. Limestone, the most important stone in the city. And after the episode, I went and did his class. So 2 hours, a chisel, a design in your mind. And my design, I did the logo of the show, has been sitting in his shop window, his vitrine, for 6 months, I guess. So if you want to see what I'm capable of as a stonemason, you just need to go to his atelier. I highly recommend doing his class, and he was a great guest. And for all those who've been on my Monday morning tour of the Marais, we pass by him, and sometimes he's there and he lets us come in and say hello. So I know some of you guys have met him. Now, number 3, this was a fun one. In charge of an icon, a chat with the Eiffel Tower's director. This is where I took the podcast to new heights, and I met with the managing director of the Eiffel Tower itself, Patrick Branco-Ruivo. Hard name for me to pronounce, but really lovely guy. And we videoed the whole thing. I took Harry, the cameraman, with me, and I remember saying to Patrick, the guest, I was like, how long do we have you for? Thinking he might say 5 minutes. And he basically said, as long as you need. He said, I've got a 3-hour window. Let's do it. So I turned that into a podcast and a YouTube video. And I just asked him tips to visiting, his favorite view. What would you ask if you had Gustave Eiffel on the telephone? And we just had a chat about Paris as well. It was fun recording up there in such an iconic place with the man in charge of it all. Number 2, now this is so... we're talking about the top guests. Number 2, a personal favorite here. It was Otis G, who was 3 at the time, and the episode's called My 3-Year-Old on Learning 3 Languages at Once. And I would say by far, this was the episode that got the most feedback from you listeners. I mean by far. I mean like maybe 5 or 10-fold any other episode. So many comments and emails, so many people who I met so this year I met more listeners probably than ever before, because I did so many more tours than ever before. And so many people would meet and say, oh, I like the podcast, loved the episode with Otis. And if you haven't heard it, I mean, you definitely should go back and listen. I just interviewed him. I sort of picked his brain. Of course he's 3. Well, he was 3. Now he's 4. He's still a kid, but just asking him what it's like to have different languages, hearing him speak and count and sing in all of them. Obviously, I'm talking about English, French, and Swedish, because his mum, my wife, Lena, is Swedish. But also hearing him sort of tell me that I'm no good at rolling my R's and things like that when I speak French. Fascinating for anyone interested in language, in the human brain, and also like international life for families with young children. So that's one that I'll definitely redo in 2026 when now he can really talk. However, I fear he won't be anywhere near as lovely. Like if you listen to that one, because he couldn't really string more than 10 words together, every now and again after he'd done about 8 words, he'd just stop, and to fill the gap, he'd just say something like, Daddy, I love you, just like that. And now he can really talk. So I think it'll be less cute and probably more Spider-Man if I had to guess. But it really is. I find it absolutely fascinating. So that will be one to watch out for next year. Number 1, this one I didn't get as much feedback from the listeners, but I got way more feedback from the world, and that was Louvre robbery. We were inside the Apollo Gallery for the break-in. And this is where 2 American tourists, Jake and Holly Barker, contacted me because they were, meters away during the break-in. They were maybe closer than anyone, and they reached out to me afterwards and they said, look, Oliver, contacting you because the only reason we're in that beautiful room was because you recommended it, and they knew they were sitting on a cool story and they wanted to share it with me first. And then in the, weeks and months since, so many news channels, the biggest ones that there are, whatever you think is the biggest news channels, they got in contact with me and they're like, how can we talk to Jake? How can we talk to Holly? And every time I just messaged Jake and Holly and said, hey, you want to talk to, I don't know who, whatever you can imagine, the Today Show in America, they're looking for you. And eventually, at first they didn't want to do anything, and then I said, you're not going to get another chance maybe in life to do this kind of stuff. And then they did it all. So you've probably seen them all over. They've been everywhere, and all the news channels everywhere telling their amazing story. So for me, that was big. Firstly, it was cool to have listeners reach out like that. But secondly, I guess it put me on the map for some of these news channels who maybe before that didn't realize that this was a podcast with some chops, and now we've proved it. So let's go on. So less podcasting now, and to look at a couple sort of big moments and milestones that come under the whole Earful Tower umbrella, which has become a much bigger umbrella than 8 years ago when it launched. 8 years ago, we just did podcasts, and now we do all sorts of things. So I gathered a few big moments, and I sort of summed up some of the bigger moments. And it was tough because this year there were lots of cool things. We reached 4 million downloads, for example. The community of followers on all the channels is up over 200,000. Our children's books are in loads of cool bookshops and museums that they weren't in before. And we even, this is something I still haven't talked about, we took a private tour of the Élysée Palace, which is like the White House of France. And more. But the 5 that stood out the most, and there's no real metric for these, but number 5, I jumped in the Seine River. That might not seem like such a big deal, because I guess any idiot could do it on any day, really, but it was cool because it was the first time that swimming in the Seine was legal in 100 years. They cleaned it up for the 2024 Olympics, and then after a while they opened a few stretches of the river again for swimmers or for anyone who wanted to take a dip, and I loved it. There was a lot of negativity. People saying, don't go in, you'll get sick. And I was like, you can't keep me away from it. I couldn't wait to go and jump in there. And there was something very, powerful. Literally, it was a powerful current, because when I turned to swim back in the sort of bit that they'd roped off, it was surprisingly difficult. But powerful about the idea that the Seine is always such a passive part of Paris. It's always in the background. It's the part that you frame your photos with, almost. You don't really go down there just to look at it. It's just there. And then, much like when it floods and everyone comes to see, suddenly people were being drawn to it, into it, and jumping it. And I thought that was great. I loved being part of the active Seine for once. And it was enough to launch it into my top 5 moments. Number 4, the US ambassador video goes viral. So Denise Bauer, who was the previous ambassador to the US, I don't know how this happened, by the way, but I'd been asking if I could film something in that incredible residency. And not only did they give us the green light to do it, but they gave us this like special behind-the-scenes access to rooms that no one gets to see. And it turned out to be Denise's sort of farewell to Paris video, like a farewell tour of this historic residence. And we just walked around for like half an hour, and the video went crazy. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hits on YouTube. And I don't know, once again, just a surprise, unexpected idea that really worked. And Denise was so lovely. We back and forth a little bit afterwards, and I don't know, she just took the time to do something that she absolutely didn't have to do, and it was so fun to get to see this building that so many people get to see the downstairs or the garden of, but to just see it for myself and showcase it to the viewers, really awesome. So highly recommend checking that out too. That video is very wonderful, opulent, decadent background. Number 3, the third top moment of the Earful Tower isn't even in France, it is in Italy. We recorded a full season from Italy. So I experimented with the Earful Everywhere, a sidekick kind of podcast to the Earful Tower, and we did 10 episodes in Rome and Venice. So when I look back on this, it was just before the summer. It's crazy what we did with 2 young children traipsing around in Rome and Venice and exploring all these things, interviewing all these people. The whole thing was sponsored by Live Tours, which is a company that does walking tours, bike tours, boat tours, everything in Rome and in other countries and cities as well. And they just took a chance on me. They said, let's see what you can do. 10 days over here, we'll look after you, and you can interview all our staff if you want, and let us know how it goes. And it was so fun. And it was quite an undertaking doing it with the children, especially in Venice. Venice with a stroller is hard to recommend because of all the bridges, obviously. But so action-packed, and we made these 10 episodes that I'm really proud of. Things like being alone in the Sistine Chapel and taking a boat out in Venice, not just the gondola, but going out Murano, and blowing glass and things like that. Met so many people. When I look back at the pictures, I can't even believe we did it. So there's an extra 10 episodes if you're done with all the Paris ones. I think it was really fun and worth a listen. Number 2, also abroad, but kind of a big deal for this show, is we had an Earful Tower meetup in New York City. I was in New York City by myself, which is a long story how that happened. Kind of a funny story too, for another time. And I just, I didn't even really know that I'd get there. And so I organized a meetup at French Wink, well, next to the French Wink shop. It's sort of near Chelsea. There's a little French restaurant, wine bar. And I sort of hinted that I might do an event. And then I think the day before I said, look, it's going to happen. I went into this shop. There's space for us. Come if you're in New York. And I didn't know if 0 people would come or more. I had no idea. Even a few people said, oh, I'd love to come. But I also realized on a warm day in New York, I'm competing with many, many things. But a big bunch of people, I think the staff said later, 40 or 50, 45 people came through. And that's wild. Imagine, it made me just think, imagine what I could do if I planned it really properly and promised like a sort of French, like a Parisian soiree, or like almost like a ticketed event where I'd recommend people bring their friends and put on a bit of a show or do a bit of a book reading. This was the least organized thing on purpose because we didn't know what would happen. It would be last minute. But the idea that there's 45 New Yorkers who listen to my little podcast about Paris means that there are potentially great things on the horizon. So, also speaking of great things on the horizon, there's some pretty cool plans for next year as well, which I won't even tease too much, but especially in the book world. Now, number 1, the most exciting thing I think for Earful Tower Moments is the tour business. Because the walking tour business doubled from 2024. I mean, I looked it up right now before I recorded, and 2025 was literally 100.00% busier than 2024. I don't know how that happened. So twice as many bookings, which is insane. So that means also insane if you think that half of the season I was sponsored by another tour company, which means I was telling everyone to go and do those tours, which obviously are great tours, especially outside of Paris. But meanwhile, running my own tour business and trying to make that grow. So the fact that it doubled is just crazy. And what it meant was, there's a thing, I shan't get too deep into these details because it's kind of boring, I think. But if your sort of side hustle grows too much within a company, then I think the rule is you can't have this is a podcast. That's the main thing the Earful Tower is, and media that happens to do walking tours. But if the walking tours get more than 50% of the income, you have to split it to its own company. And I don't know if I passed that or if I was approaching it, but the accountant that I used was like, make that its own separate thing. So it's its own entity now. Not its own company, but it's its own sort of entity, which means it's growing and it's really exciting. And I think 250 people left really positive 5-star reviews. So if you're thinking about doing a tour in 2026, don't let me tell you that it's worth doing. The people have spoken. Great reviews, and it's getting popular. So come and tour with us, with me and my team in 2026. So there you go. There's 15 things, 15 sort of highlights, 10 that you can very tangibly go back and listen to, 5 that you can, I don't know, smile that you know or think about doing yourself. And especially with meetups, especially if we do more meetups, I'm looking forward to that. But as for me, thanks for being part of this. Thanks especially to the members on Patreon and Substack who keep this thing spinning. I say that all the time, but it's so true. If everybody just quit, if everyone quit Patreon and Substack tomorrow, I'd stop doing the podcast. And that means, it means it wouldn't be there. So if you enjoy these new episodes coming out, you can help secure the future of it, which I also know is the main reason why people support, because they want the show to be there next week. So if you want this show to be there next week forever, become a member and help me do it. Otherwise, consider booking a walking tour. Consider subscribing on all the channels so that you help this thing grow. And as for me, we've got several pieces of really big news to share, big and exciting news next year, and I can't wait to. So I'll be back again next week with another episode in 2026, talking probably about bucket lists. And yeah, I can't wait to take this channel to new heights. I hope you're going to stick around for it. See you in 2026. Merci beaucoup and au revoir.